Shalom, this is Nizama Shal Hamada Bar Yasharel on my channel, Nizama the Hebrew Mystic Healer. As always, before I get started, I'd like to show a little love to my 3D kin, the 12 tribes of Israel scattered to the four corners of this third-dimensional earth plane of existence. Much love and shalom. I'd also like to show some love to my cosmic kin, scattered to the 12 dimensions of this universal egg matrix. Much love and shalom to you. And as always, show some appreciation to my viewers, especially those of you who are subscribed. If you're not yet subscribed, please do so now, and don't forget to hit the notification bell. So today I'm going to be doing a video on the Serpens Starseeds, the wisdom keepers of the underworld. Why do I say this? The serpent represents the underworld. The serpent represents the earth and the waters of the earth. The serpent is a primordial symbol, and in the most ancient of cultures, the serpent was considered the creator. Allow us to go back in time for a moment and think about many of the mythologies of the rainbow serpent that occurred within the indigenous tribal cultures of the Americas. I'm talking about North America specifically, but this mythology was very powerful because it was a rainbow serpent, an earth rainbow serpent, that actually created the animals, that created the rivers that came out of the earth, and this serpent came from under the ground. Now there's other serpent mythologies that I may touch on, but I don't want to spend too much time on that because I really want to focus on this particular starseed placement and what it means. So obviously somebody who is incarnated within this constellation as their first universal incarnation is going to embody more traits than somebody who is incarnated in this constellation later. Though he will still have some of the traits, but this can be very powerful for somebody who has this as their actual starseed placement. Now, it's interesting because this has been a fairly new client incarnation that's come up for me when I've done client readings. And what's so fascinating and so amazing is as I was doing these client readings and I was tapping into this constellation that I'd never heard of. I had heard of Ophiuchus, but I never thought of the Serpens, which is held by Ophiuchus, as being its own separate constellation, when in fact it is. So as I was receiving the information about the Serpents constellation for the clients, I was actually activating within myself my own genetic codes because I realized that I myself had actually incarnated within the Serpents constellation. Not as my first incarnation, but another incarnation. So what does it mean to have this as an incarnation, specifically as a starseed origin point? Why do I call them the wisdom keepers of the underworld? Well, as I already previously mentioned, the snake symbolizes that. But for people that are born under this or are incarnated within this constellation at some point in the past, and it is still within their cosmic DNA resonance, they're going to have the ability to tap into the underworld. Now, I mean this both in the external sense and in the internal sense. The underworld is a representation for the unconscious mind in the internal sense, and in the external sense, it actually represents the lower shamanic realms. So it's the realm of the ancestors. It's the realm of the totems in many cases. It's the realm of the dead in a general sense. And it also represents the aspects of ourselves and our own memories, our own behaviors, our own, emotions and thoughts and, character traits that we repress into the unconscious. It becomes shadow. So somebody that has this particular placement is going to have a lot of shadow work to do. And not because they are quote-unquote bad or dark or evil people or people that have just done horrible things. It has nothing to do with that. It is because it is their journey and it is their purpose to dive into the underworld within themselves and within the shamanic realms. So these people may find themselves spontaneously having past life memory recall They may find themselves being approached by a lot of beings, a lot of spirits that will actually be connected to their ancestry, but they may not understand it first. So for instance, someone with displacement may receive dreams of past life memories, or dreams of ancestral memories, or have dreams of ancestors, not just on Earth, but from other, star systems, approaching them and talking to them, and they may not understand why or what's going on. They may go through a type of self-initiation into the shamanic realm. They may become shamans themselves. They may become, psychopomps. But either way, these people are really here to dive into and explore their own unconscious, their own underworld. And they may often end up becoming mediums, becoming necromancers, becoming shamans, becoming witches, becoming healers, anything having to do with the underworld, because it is a very large part of them. And the symbol of their actual cosmic resonance, that serpent symbol, carries within it the wisdom of the underworld, but not just the underworld. It's the wisdom of life itself. It's the wisdom of order and chaos. It's the wisdom of transformation. It's the wisdom of life and death, the circle and the cycles of, life and death and rebirth. The shedding of the serpent's skin, the shedding of the serpent's fangs. For a lot of you who may not know this, I didn't know this until fairly recently, but serpents do not just shed their skin, they also shed their fangs. So a serpent sheds their fangs about every 3 months, and that's about the same amount of time that they shed their skin. Now what's interesting about that is that someone who has a serpent's incarnation within serpents, and this doesn't just apply to serpents, this can actually apply to any incarnation that may be reptilian, draconic, serpentine, anything along those lines. But specifically when dealing with serpents, is they may find themselves, even if they didn't incarnate there first, but if it was just a dominant incarnation, or just that they incarnated there at all, they may find themselves more in tune to the lunar cycles of every 3 months. And what I mean by that is they may find themselves not just being in tune to and sensitive to the lunar cycles in general, especially if they're in female avatars in this incarnation, but specifically they may find themselves, if they pay close attention, to being on cycles of transformation every 3 months. Now this could be something small, or it could be something a little bigger, but either way, their body goes through, and their mind and their emotions and their surroundings and their internal external world will tend to go through some kind of transformation every 3 months. So this is how you would identify a serpent's starseed. They are going to be people that, have the ability to access the underworld realms. They're typically mediums. They have a tendency to become shamans, regardless of whatever bloodline they may be connected to. I do want to add that in a general sense, this isn't always the case, but in a general sense, Serpens Serpents is really connected more so to the indigenous of North, South, and Central America. Now, this doesn't always have to be the case, but that's what I've found so far. And again, this is a fairly new placement that has come up for me, for myself, and within the clients the records that I've accessed. And so I can't say for sure, but I can say, and you guys know I stand by this, that we do incarnate within our own bloodline, as above, so below. So more than likely, this is going to be the dominant physical bloodline connection relating to serpents would be in this area. And that makes sense because there's a lot of serpent mythology in North, Central, and South America. Whether it's the rainbow serpent, whether it's the horned serpent, whether it's Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. So however you want to look at it, this serpent features very heavily in that region as a creator god. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. Now, what does the serpent's being look like when they're incarnated within serpents? Now, that is interesting because I feel like I'm getting a lot of different images when I look at client records. So I feel like there's a lot of variety here. Now, interestingly enough, I do see some serpent beings that can almost look Hydra-like, even though this is not the Hydra constellation. And I do believe that there is some distant relation or connection between Serpents and Hydra, even though they're totally different constellations and there's a totally different purpose and resonance. There is some overlap there and connection. Another thing I want to mention is that the beings here will tend to look more like large serpents, kind of like anacondas, but they'll be fully sentient. So you won't have as much of the Naga-like shape-shifting going on here as you would in Ophiuchus or Hydra. But it does happen. But I see more of the actual large serpent body, a large sentient serpent body. Now, sometimes I see Hydra-like beings, sometimes I will see Gorgon-like beings or Naga-like beings. So it does happen. But again, I don't have a large pot to pull from on this because this is a fairly new incarnation. And how it happens with clients for me is I will tend to get people in 3s, and then 6s, interestingly enough, and then 9s. And I will tend to kind of have people gravitate to me back to back that tend to have similar placements. And then they'll be grouped together even in the same day for readings. So it's really interesting. I digress. So the appearance, usually color spectrum-wise, ranges from black, brown to green. And I'm not saying that there aren't other colors. Again, I'm seeing the association with the rainbow serpent, but I feel like that's more of a mythological tie and symbolism. So, in a nutshell, this is how I would describe the Serpent Starseeds. It's very important for Serpent Starseeds to not neglect their shadow, to not neglect their unconscious mind. It's very important for them to work with lunar energies, but also to balance it with the solar energies once they feel like they have had more of a grip on their unconscious world. It is important for them to not fight against their changeability and their need for transformation, even if it makes them uncomfortable. It is also important for them to be willing to let go of the old to make room for the new, but also to be willing to face and heal aspects of their shadow. Because again, I said this placement is very important for shadow work. So they really need to focus on shadow work, on ancestral healing, and on really dealing with the underworld and understand that that's where their inner power lies, so to speak. That's where their spiritual gifts are centered as well. Now, how these people will act in day-to-day life, there isn't going to be anything that's going to stand out to others other than these people may seem very preoccupied with the occult, with certain spiritual closed practices, like they have to do with ancestral worship or nature-based worship or dealings with the underworld or the darker side of the Qibla. You may see these people in pagan religions. You may see these people tend to really love snakes or serpents or be drawn to that image. So other than that, there isn't going to be anything that particularly stands out on the external. This is all internally based. And these people will be able to access wisdom within themselves and within the shamanic realms. They will be given that gift and that ability.